Hi, guys. Welcome to the Gives and the Bank recruiting podcast on BuckeyeScoop.com. I am Marc Givler. I am being joined by my two compadres here. We have Alex Gleitman and Bill Greene tonight, and we are going to be giving you guys the latest on Ohio State recruiting. We got a few topics to hit on tonight, but just very briefly, I just want to kind of run down the podcast format because this is our first episode. It's generally going to be myself and Bill, but we will have Alex on frequently, and we will also be working on getting some interesting guests in the recruiting world that you guys would like to hear from. So let us know privately if there's someone you want on the podcast, and we can try and make that happen for everybody. But, it's going to be a once-a-week thing. I'm super excited. Bill and I have been wanting to work together for years. I've had a chance to work with Alex now for about the past year, and obviously that's went very well. So it's great to have you guys here. And, Alex, I appreciate you making the time tonight to hang out with us.
Yeah, man, I'm just happy to be here. It's great to be a part of the Scoop and teaming up with both of you. As you mentioned, I worked with you the last year. I've worked with Bill for a few years at 24/7. So kind of getting all three of us together, it's really exciting, and happy to join you on this first podcast.
Yeah, Bill and I might have some other ideas down the road as well. We're going to be introducing, I think, another podcast that will step outside of the recruiting world a little bit here in about a week. But in the meantime, it's going to be kind of the three-headed monster here tonight. Bill, you worked with Alex longer than I have, so you know more than most what he brings to the table. So it's going to be interesting, I think, working the three of us together. It's been something we've all kind of joked about for years, and here we are.
Yeah, you guys, you really wanted Alex to be a part of this team, and, I had already agreed to it, and you were like, can the three of us, how will we do? And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, the three of us are going to do awesome. And I only had one vote, and it was an emphatic votes for Alex. It would have been more than, very positive. Like, I wanted him to be a part of this team pretty badly. And, I did my best recruiting job that, to Alex that, how much we did want him. And so I'm thrilled to be with you two guys and, ready to get started here.
Yeah, I think we're all going to bring a little bit to the table here in terms of some different stuff. You guys are going to get us together on podcasts and on different podcast shows we're going to be doing throughout the week. And you're going to get Alex's live chats and sit-down interviews with prospects. You're going to get Bill's bank blogs, and I'm going to have my weekly column which will be rebranded from where it was before, but I will have a weekly column and be doing a podcast, of course, once a week with Bill and sometimes Alex and sometimes some other guests. And so I think we're going to all work together very well. We all have kind of different personalities, different ways of doing the job, and I think that'll mesh well together. So let's get started here. Ohio State's on a pretty historic run here on the recruiting trail. They've kind of boat raced everybody right now out to the number one spot. And, it was kind of a weird time to go on a run with everything shut down. I'm going to let maybe Alex tackle this first, but, what do you think is the key here? Why is this staff just on fire right now? What is the secret ingredient?
Yeah, Mark, you made a good point. It's pretty crazy. When the whole pandemic first happened and the shutdown happened, my initial thought was that a lot of guys would not be committing, that a lot of processes would slow down. And in fact, it was the opposite. And I think for Ohio State, they benefited so much because of the relationships they've been able to build. I think last year you looked at their 2020 class, and it was a really strong class, but it was definitely heavy and tilted when you talk about the talent, the top talent toward the offensive side of the ball. And I think a big reason for that is because the guys on the defensive side of the ball were all pretty new for the most part, other than Larry Johnson. And so now you have a year under their belt, basically 2 years almost, building relationships with the kids in the 2021 class and 2022 class. And I think you're seeing those efforts pay off when it comes to the relationships that they've been able to build, and then converting those into commitments. And so that's first and foremost. And then I think, it all starts at the top with Ryan Day. It's just unbelievable. There has been zero, or I should say little to zero, drop off from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day. And when you're talking about on the recruiting front, that's a big deal, because Urban Meyer was, in my opinion, the best head coach recruiter in college football, for the last decade plus. And so, I think with Ryan Day, he's just such a genuine guy. He comes off so genuine. I think that that's not an act, that's real. And I think people see that, and he connects really well to not only kids, but their families too. And parents just trust him. Coaches trust him. Trainers, whoever's involved, trust him in handing over their kids to Ohio State. And so I think those two things combined have led to a lot of success for the Buckeyes thus far in 2021.
Yeah, Bill, are you surprised by this? I mean, you've kind of been in the game for a while. These are interesting circumstances right now, and Ohio State benefited more than anybody from this shutdown, which was a little surprising to me. But how surprised, are you about all this?
Well, I've been doing this now almost 20 years and never seen anything like what we saw with the coronavirus. And Ohio State really was rolling, before the virus actually hit. So they were really ready to hit the ground running. And I thought Alex really made a great point that with the new defensive staff, I think those guys were able to really form better relationships with these 2021 kids than they did with the 2020 kids, just because they were hired so late, after Urban retired and Ryan Day decided to, retool that whole staff. And, we all knew those guys were great recruiters, but yet, you just can't step in and call a kid. Well, Kerry Combs can, but most coaches can't just step in and call a kid for the first time and have the kid commit soon. We did see Kerry Combs do that this year, but that didn't surprise any of us. But I think, Hafley and Al Washington, those guys, it took them a while to kind of find their sea legs there. But, boy, they did a good job. And now this year it's exceptional. And I think they, as a staff, I think their strategy with the coronavirus was to just be super, super aggressive. And I do think you saw some staffs, and I think Alabama's one, were back on their heels and kind of waited to see how are things going to shake out here with the visits and all that. Or Ohio State did not sit back on their heels. They were super aggressive. That had to have come from the top, and Ryan Day, I think it really paid off for them.
Yeah, it's wild what they've put together here. I think the thing that surprised me the most was how quickly they seemed to be in position and ready for this situation. It couldn't have been more than a couple of days, and we already started hearing about the Zoom chats and the
no doubt.
The virtual visits, and it just it was just they were just ready to go, and it was amazing how fast they adjusted to this. And I think that was a big thing here. I think they were ahead of the curve. I think other teams were playing catch up on the technology and how Ohio State was using technology. I think a lot of schools were behind them on that, and I think that played a big part. And I think they've got a great mix on the staff. You have your veterans, you have your Kevin Wilsons and your Larry Johnsons and your Greg Madisons, and you have your young up-and-comers like Brian Hartline and Al Washington. And, of course, it all starts with Ryan Day, who was an elite recruiter as an assistant, learned under arguably the best recruiting head coach of all time in Urban Meyer, and has had a seamless transition in that role. And so that's, really, to me, were the two major things. Is that you've got a great, diverse staff that, has all great recruiters, and you coupled that with the way they were able to kind of jump the gun. I mean, it was like a sprinter coming out of the blocks there where that shut down, and they came out of the blocks so strong, like they had known it was going to happen or something. It was unbelievable. So with that said, I mean, I'll throw this to you, Bill. Can anyone catch them for number one in this class?
That is going to be really tough. And like I say, a lot is going to depend on the whole decommitment and who signs where thing. But if you look at this class of Ohio State, I don't see too many guys at risk of fleeing the class. So rather than lose out, they might actually benefit and add to their lead. They may be able to flip when the visits start up again. That would just shock all of us to death. Because if you look at Ohio State's record, if they can get that kid to come on an official visit, their hit rate is almost, it's unbelievable. And, they're still looking to add guys to this class. Where this class sits right now, if they would stop right now, not recruit another kid in this class, this would have been a top 5, 6, 7 class last year with the points they've accumulated right now. So they're going to be really, really tough to catch for number one.
Yeah, what do you think, Alex? I mean, do you see a contender out there that could disrupt them, or what's a doomsday scenario that could knock them out of the number one spot? Do you see anything like that?
Yeah, it's real hard, especially when you talk about. I feel like they're in a really good spot for Emeka Egbuka. You got JT out in Washington too, and if they can land those two guys, I really don't see how anyone catches them. I mean, that said, as Bill mentioned before, Alabama's kind of been sitting back on their heels a little bit. If they get going, they start to get some of those dudes that they can pull in and flip some guys. You never can count out Nick Saban. And then, of course, Georgia, Kirby Smart's done a great job down there, just recruited some absolutely monster classes. And I could see him, having a really strong finish, potentially pushing Ohio State. Clemson's going to be real good. I know Oklahoma's got some things cooking, but at the end of the day, I agree with Bill. I think it's going to be really hard for someone to catch them. And I see Ohio State finally, it seems like we've been waiting all these years, finally finishing with the number one recruiting class in the country.
Yeah, I look at things and kind of take a pulse of the national landscape. And the one school I think is recruiting at a similar level in this class, but I don't think they're going to be able to get there numbers-wise, whereas I think Ohio State's going to take a very full group. Is I think Clemson player for player is close. I think Clemson's in the discussion in terms of the quality of player they're attracting, but it doesn't sound like they're going to be able to match the numbers that Ohio State's going to match in this class, and it is partially a numbers game too. It's not only the quality of your commits, as we saw with the Ohio State 2017 class, which if they had a few more bodies would have been probably a consensus number one class. I think Clemson's going to have that problem this year. Certainly Alabama is a wild card because they're just getting started. I always say Nick Saban starts recruiting in October. So we'll see what they do. And then Georgia's, really a kind of a wild card as well in terms of just their ability to close on those 5-star type of guys. But I think it's going to be really tough. And like Bill alluded to, there's going to be chaos this fall. It's going to be really fascinating to me. A lot of guys committed early. And around the country, I'm not talking specifically here about Ohio State, but nationally. And that's going to be a real challenge around the country, is kind of keeping what you have. But I think Ohio State's aware of that, and they're well prepared for that. And like I've said in the past when I've talked about that topic, just because there's going to be chaos this fall doesn't mean that it's going to be bad for Ohio State. There could be chaos that's good for Ohio State. Maybe Rajon Davis takes a closer look. Maybe Jordan Hancock takes a closer look at things. So there could be good chaos for the Buckeyes this fall. So I'm having a hard time seeing a path right now. I think this strong Ohio class gives them a good base, and a lot of these out-of-state kids seem to have really bought in. Kyle McCord's not going anywhere. There's a lot of guys that I think are really bought in, and not a whole lot of risks, as Bill alluded to. So going to be interesting. So we've been going here probably about 15 minutes. We want to keep these shows probably somewhere in the 20 to 25 minute range, just long enough for you guys to get some good information, but we don't want to drag these to an hour or so. So we're trying to condense everything, give you guys, good quality stuff as opposed to just, sitting here and, talking each other's heads off for 70 minutes or something. So we're going to kind of wrap this up. We'll call it the lightning round for now. We'll see if we change that at all. But each one of us has kind of a little nugget or so on a player right now. we'll start with Bill here. Tony Grimes dropped his top 4 on May 31st. That included Ohio State. There was speculation on if the Buckeyes would be on there or not. They did make it. North Carolina, Georgia, Texas A&M as well. Bill, what do you have on Tony Grimes?
Right now, early June, my feeling is that Ohio State is a hat on the table. I think it's a status thing to have Ohio State in this thing. I don't think they're going to get him. If he signed today, I don't know that Ohio State would be 4 of those 4. I think he's trolling a little bit. I don't buy it. And the people I've talked to outside of Ohio State don't think they're in it. And I don't think Ohio State really feels like they're in it right now. If you had to, put a gun to my head right now, and Mark and I, we love those gambling lines. If I had to put a line, I really think Jordan Hancock is a higher percentage of coming to Ohio State than Tony Grimes, because I have Tony Grimes right now as a 0, and I would have Hancock as a, higher than that. I think Hancock loved Ohio State at one point. So if you loved him once, there's always a chance you could love him again. And that's the one I'm really interested in. I want to see when the visits open up, does he go to Dabo Swinney and tell him, I'm taking that visit? Even though they have that no visit policy, I could see Hancock taking a trip to Ohio State. And if that happens, man, that's one that we would all have to really track closely. So to get back to Tony Grimes, to me, it's 0 right now. Now, do I ever count Kerry Combs out? I do not. But he's got some work to do. And I think Grimes would have to, he's got to come back to campus. And they got to get him on campus at some point. So right now, Tony Grimes, I've got no chance. So I don't know what you guys think. You guys may have different information on that than I do. But for me right now, when I look at Tony Grimes, I think Ohio State is a hat on the table.
Yeah, I agree with you. The last few weeks, I think it's North Carolina. Look, we're what, six months and change out from when Tony can sign, and we've seen that ebb and flow like crazy over the last year. So
I think there's some ebbs and some flows to go with that one.
But right now, Dre Bly, North Carolina, I think those guys have quite an edge, actually. But it'll be interesting. You raise an interesting point on Jordan Hancock, especially with Dabo's no visit policy, which I would argue is not as firm as people think. I think we saw what happened when Deshaun Watson put that to the test and made a little sneak visit to Auburn and wasn't booted out of the class. So I think there could be some wiggle room there that maybe people don't think there is, but it is going to be interesting, because I think what a policy like that can do is it can breed a little bit of animosity if the kid does in fact want to make other visits. And at that point, I think it's harder to get a kid back in the fold when that happens. But it'll be interesting, now Hancock's buddy Barrett Carter's committed there as well. So that's going to be something to watch. But yeah, I'm sure Ohio State's going to keep recruiting both of those guys, actually. And it'll be interesting to see if they can gain any traction. Alex, you have an item, I think, here on Hudson Wolf. What you got?
Yeah, I don't want to give away too much. I'm actually going to be running, just like I did at my last stop, a weekly column and feature called A-Deck, where I'll kind of share, the inside scoop that I have on a number of different topics, both team and recruiting related. So one of those items on Thursday when the site opens up is going to be about Hudson Wolf. So be sure to check that out. But, I think this is a recruitment that probably all three of us saw as Ohio State's to lose at one point over the last couple of months. And I could say pretty strongly I felt like Ohio State was in the driver's seat. I think that's where the kid wanted to go. I know other commits felt good about that. I know the staff was feeling – they never felt like it was a lock, but they always felt like they were in a pretty good place. This is one that a lot of people had picks out for Ohio State, but I'm starting to feel like this one is trending away from Ohio State, trending toward Tennessee. There are reasons for that. I don't want to go into too much because I don't want to play spoiler alert on what's going to come out in A-Deck, but, I think a decision is coming soon. I think originally the plan was to take official visits, go to all the schools with his family, and see, which one was the best fit for him after those visits and make the call. But with visits seemingly being pushed back to at least September, I mean, the dead period is extended through July. I can't imagine if there is going to be a season that they open things up in August. So we're probably looking at September at the best. And from what I know, I don't see Hudson Wolf waiting that long. I think something can happen in the next week to 2 weeks potentially. I think if that happens, that it's not a great thing for Ohio State. I think it would actually favor Tennessee. I don't think a final decision has been made yet, but from everything I know, talking to people on the Ohio State side of things, talking to people actually on the Tennessee side of things, talking to people close to the Wolf camp, I don't think a decision sooner versus later favors Ohio State. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It could go either way. But again, the reasons behind why I feel things are starting to trend toward Tennessee, I'll have that all for you guys in the A deck on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm going to wish I had stuck to my guns if Wolf ends up in the SEC. I was kind of slow to come around on the notion that Ohio State was going to get him. And, of course, I did come around on it the last few weeks as things started to really pick up. Always seemed to me like a kid that was going to play in the SEC. And then really the last few weeks have picked up a lot of steam that it was going to be Ohio State. So, but now, yeah, I mean, it looks like Tennessee is making a really strong push, and there are some issues coming up right now where it could be a situation where Ohio State's right back in a situation where they're going to have to really fight like hell here. So, that's going to be interesting to watch here the next couple of weeks, like you said, to be interested to see if he does in fact go through with the decision in the next couple of weeks, or if maybe some sort of compromise could be reached where he doesn't commit anywhere and they just continue to wait this out. So that'll be something interesting to follow, I think, and looking forward to seeing what you have there in A deck. My item today is Derek Davis, the big time safety out of Gateway High School in suburban Pittsburgh. Hearing that a shortened list is going to be coming for the 4-star prospect, probably 5 schools. It could be 8. Yes, I'm rolling my eyes too along with that number, but it's looking more like a 5 right now. I don't know for a fact what the 5 are. I have a good read. I think certainly Ohio State, Penn State, Clemson are going to be on there. And, I'll have more from Derek Thursday as well. I did a very in-depth interview with Derek, and that'll be up on the site Thursday. And he talks about a variety of schools. But so the main 3 players are still the same. What I think is going to be interesting is LSU and Georgia are now very, very much in the game. They are in this to win it. And they are really pushing hard right now, and I think those 2 schools, if it's a 5-team list, I think those would be the 2 that would round that out. I still feel very good about Ohio State here. I think Penn State is the biggest threat, but he just seems to talk a little differently about Ohio State to me in terms of not just the football, but the business school and just a lot of the job opportunities in a city the size of Columbus with approximately 1 million people in the metro area. So. He still seems very fond of Ohio State. Penn State, obviously, right there. I'd have Clemson 3 right now, and I think they're kind of a weak 3 right now because he has not visited Georgia or LSU yet. He's been doing a lot of Zoom virtual visits with those guys. He's prioritizing those 2 programs if and when he can take visits. And so the fact that Clemson got their visit about a year ago, and these other 2 haven't had a visit yet, that leads me to believe there's some upward mobility there for those SEC schools. But going to be interesting, still like where Ohio State stands. But we're going to wrap this up here. We appreciate everyone's support and hopefully giving us a listen, giving us a try here. Hopefully give us a try on the site, BuckeyeScoop.com here on Thursday is our target launch date, and hopefully you guys got something out of this, and we'll continue to adjust on the fly. This was our first run, our maiden voyage, so hopefully we'll get some good feedback and do better next time. But thanks guys, and we'll catch you later.